Hello out there. Welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel, and we try to dive into great theories of everything, ancient and modern, mostly obscure. A lot of people who kind of are my heroes, who stuck by their guns, and even though they weren't getting paid and they weren't getting any recognition, they stuck with putting out their theory through thick and thin, and came up with some great results that could be earth-shattering if they were known. And today is our 96th video that we've done on the book called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha from Dr. Daniel Ingram. And Ingram gets into all things having to do with meditation, and now he's delving into the psychic powers, or siddhis, and they are available to people kind of more and more as they get into meditation. Whether it's concentration or insight meditation. And but they come at high cost, and there are a lot of warnings that he gives just about your stability and just basic issues of ethics, having these powers. And so he gets into talking about him in detail, but right now we're on a chapter that is directly called The Benefits of the Powers. So this might be the bright side of the equation, but maybe the 3 videos before this you might want to also watch to get kind of the warnings. Okay. The experiences of the siddhis can help people live in the world in a way so that they appreciate its richness and yet are not grasping at it. At their best, the siddhis can serve as a basis for very deep exploration of the aspects of ourselves that we rarely see with such clarity, particularly the territory detailed by the likes of Jung and the shamanic traditions. Occasionally, such experiences can bring profound epiphanies, moments when we see our issues and shadow sides so clearly that our lives are transformed for the better. Though it is true that some of these experiences are just weird and not easily interpreted. There are also many ordinary and what might be termed recreational uses for the powers. Since this is a book on Buddhist practice, I would strongly recommend applying basic Buddhist concepts of morality to these uses as well. Common, relatively easy powers are dissolving headaches and neck tension, enhancing lucid dreams, grounding our energy to identify and modify our emotions, exploring the standard emphases of each of the chakras, such as tuning into the energy of the heart chakra or unknowing tensions in the throat chakra. Unknotting tensions in the throat chakra. Doing ordinary psychological work just by turning our intention to our issues with a power-like intent and willingness to allow the images to grow strong so as to gain clarity regarding challenges that we need to resolve or positively transform. This is a very short list of possible things we can do with this sort of paradigm. But if you start looking around at additional sources, you will find many more. While this next point might sound a bit radical, there are good reasons to assume that we are all acting at what might be considered a magical level all the time, and just doing it with little, if any, awareness of that fact. The best argument I know of for learning how to work at the level of the cities is to bring consciousness and compassion to a process that is happening already. Said another way, as we are already casting spells all the time, whenever there is awareness and intent, we might as well learn to do it well. The movie Frozen makes this basic point by having a main character that can't help but do magic, and until she learns to control it, chaos ensues. It is an excellent point. However, consider that the mental states of every other character in the movie similarly lead to tons of real-world effects. So this is a lesson to us all, that our objective states and how they manifest in the world do matter. Few of us have a good understanding or control of our minds. It is a rare skill set. Plenty of dark emotions swirl around in us, petty grudges, bits of stuck anger, forbidden lust, greed, jealousy, neurotic fears, and perhaps much worse. These dark aspects of ourselves can cause magical effects and experiences just as more neutral and skillful intentions can cause them. The problem is that moving our arm, which we have spent a long time learning how to control so as not to do things like hitting people when they anger us, we generally have not had much experience with magical effects to have developed in the same way the skill set that controls what might be best termed magical intent. Thus, the potential is great for sending out bursts, or worse, of even greater quantities of useful or unskillful energy into the world before we even realize what we have done. There is nothing like getting into this territory to show just how uncontrolled and undisciplined our minds are, and how much unskillful energy might be spinning out into our causal reality. When I say causal reality, I mean the world of causes and effects that we live in. Even if we take a very conservative and skeptical view of the powers, the view that there are just purely internal experiences and nothing more, those who employ strong concentration to cultivate dark and unsavory intentions in their mind streams, and maybe even genetics, as the science of epigenetics is revealing, write those aspects deeply into their way of being. As we are part of the world, we write those intentions into our world, even if you don't believe in the unusual external effects. The unsavory consequences experienced in the mind and body because of doing dark magic are very real. Our inner life shapes our outer life. All actions are led by the mind. Mind is their master. Mind is their maker. Explain the first lines of the Dhammapada, one of the most widely read collections of the Buddhist sayings. Strong concentration and the experiences of the powers can really show us how emotional energies, coupled with things like deep archetypal symbols, can really alter how we relate to our ordinary reality. Be sure to alter your inner landscape and mental wiring in ways that are skillful and beneficial as you can possibly manage, for that way you ensure positive outcomes regardless of whether you believe in reincarnation. Those of us who fail to appreciate that what we do in power's territory is altering our wiring for better or for worse are likely to run into trouble. Thus, training in magic can be a radical extension of training in morality, an ethos that recognizes that every single intention and feeling is a magical act. This is one of the most important lessons that we can learn from the powers, as getting up into the meditative levels through which we can experience them can give us a profound demonstration of the implications of even the subtlest inclination. This essential insight can inspire us to train to have all thoughts, All feelings and all intentions, even those not obviously externally acted upon, reflect our highest aspirations, lest those be unskillful resonances permeating this totally interconnected field of causality. Furthermore, interest in experiencing the powers can fascinate people, and that can be a great motivator for people to train to much higher degrees of concentration than they otherwise would. And training in concentration is generally skillful, though it is common to concentrate on unskillful things if we are not careful, such as ruminating on past events and people who made us angry. Further, the practice of the powers themselves, such as more stable experiences like traveling out of body, creating luminous images in the air, and seeing and manipulating energy channels and auras, require high levels of concentration to sustain and are thus actually strong shamatha practices. It is also possible to use the experiences of the powers, particularly the visions and traveling out of body, as a basis for insight practice by the standard method of bare sensate investigation with a focus on the three characteristics of those sensations as they arise out of extremely high levels of clarity and concentration. The experiences of the powers can also be so otherworldly in content that our normal fixations and preoccupations may be left behind, leaving those who incline to insight freer to delve deeply into the practices that lead to wisdom. Experiences of insight in these realms can be staggering and awesome. They are not soon forgotten. Tantric visualization practices at their best make powerful use of this fact. By definition, if you have visualized a three-dimensional intelligent entity who is doing their own thing, you are in strong concentration in the fourth jhana. And it is just a question of seeing the three characteristics of that to get some serious insight, specifically seeing that the intelligence and awareness of any being is the same as your own awareness, or seeing the whole field of experience rotate in three quick shifting twists to have the whole thing vanish and take you out, creating an entrance to fruition through one of the three doors. My ability to understand then right about the three doors was greatly enhanced by taking practice to the level of strong concentration and the powers. I think that many practitioners have a hard time understanding the doors because they never stepped up to that level. I also found that the realms of strong concentration and of the powers profoundly enhance my understanding of jhana, and particularly the third jhana, which is so odd in some ways in comparison to the others. There was nothing like seeing the third jhana drawn out at the level of precise luminous geometry to create a great deal of insight into exactly what the phase issues were and where the attention was and was not clear. Seeing this helped me to navigate every dark night thereafter much more easily, as now I knew exactly what the fundamental problem was as well as what the hidden strengths of those stages were. There are more reasons to consider cultivating the powers, or at least the level of concentration that would allow you to access them to benefit and deepen your own understanding of the Dharma. Further, any wholesome qualities such as loving kindness that are cultivated at the level of the powers are written into the brain, and more importantly, the mind, with a level of intensity that ordinary practice simply can't achieve. And this transitions us nicely into the next section. And so we get to the next chapter, which is called chapter 68, Magic and the Brahma Viharas. Brahma Viharas. Despite talking more about the powers in the first edition than most meditation manuals do, I have still been accused of saying little that was practical or useful about them. This following section had a 2-year gestation period during which I felt like I was pregnant and having premature contractions, like it was kicking around in my mind, and I would try to write something and yet nothing would come. Then one day, after 2 years of this working itself out in the back of my being, I suddenly had to write it down, and it came out as fast as I could type it, which took about 2 hours. I had no idea where it was leading until I got done typing it. Thus, I offer this baby to you. I leave it nearly in its original form, with its odd outline format in places, as it seems to have its own inner coherence. May it do something useful for your practice. I myself was surprised where the analysis led, which is to the Brahma Viharas, divine abodes, abides, states, or dwellings, something that was woefully underdeveloped in the first edition. My treatment of the Brahma Viharas is still undeveloped and worthy of much more study, commentary, and specific advice. But this is a good start, and if you supplement it with readings from other reference sources, you should do just fine. If this more formal discourse on magic totally bores you, which I would personally find mind-boggling, but I admit that people have peculiar tastes, then skip to the section below on how to cultivate the Brahma Viharas of loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. Whatever language we use to describe the magical potentials that exist within people in the wide web of causality, we will run into problems when dealing with anyone who is not well versed in the terminology, not broad-minded, or who is inexperienced in these domains. For example, if you call magic by the name science, you may alienate both those who have a religious aversion to science, as well as scientists who would not lump unusual effects into science. If you call it magic, then you alienate the scientific types or merely the concrete and conventional. At some point, you will see a breakdown in communication with almost everyone. But those with real knowledge and understanding will not have a hard time getting back on track. The trick is to work with people where they are. Okay, this section is called Formal Definitions. Consciousness plus intention produces magic. Anything that was produced by these two, even in the least conscious or subtle way, is a magical act or product. This broad definition of magic, while more correct than the less inclusive ones, can be limiting. So I will define two subsets of magic for the sake of discussion. One, ordinary magic, that which most people don't call magic, involving what the ordinary person generally believes to be simple intentions leading to actions, realizing that intentions themselves are actions, and very important ones, like lifting a spoon with your hand or composing a symphony. For the sake of clarity, I will refer to ordinary magical effects simply as ordinary effects. And then extraordinary magic, too, includes the levels of causal effects that are beyond what most people consider the ordinary world of cause and effect. For example, the realm that science, with the occasional exception of some theoreticians in quantum physics and a few in what is considered the fringes of science, considers mythical, such as invoking an angel or hearing someone else's thoughts. In short, what most people would call magic, regardless of whether they believe in it, would fall into this realm, including magical effects from ordinary actions. That is, effects beyond what ordinary people imagine come from what they misperceive to be simple, non-magical acts, something I term collateral magic. For the sake of clarity, I will call extraordinary magical effects simply magical effects, realizing that this may cause confusion in those who do not understand the full implications of the broad definition of magic. The more we increase our ability to concentrate and to perceive reality clearly, the more we will begin to perceive the extraordinary magical aspects of reality. Magic can be looked at from 2 points of view. A, the ultimate, in which all that occurs is the natural, impersonal unfolding of the lawful pattern of totally interconnected causality. And B, the relative, in which each individual agent has the power to influence their field of experience, universe, life. The combination of understanding ordinary magical effects and relative reality is something I will call conventional reality. Next is the degree to which the act is consciously perceived or conceived as a magical act. For instance, an ordinary non-magically oriented person might, in a moment of rage, suddenly decide that they wish to send that rage flying through space against the person they are enraged by. If they consciously understood that this act was causal and magical, they would be more likely tempered by their own moral and philosophical codes than if that act were not recognized as the clearly magical act that it is. Thus, we have conscious magic and unconscious magic. By way of another example, someone might just be walking around in a self-obsessed rage with no obvious awareness that this internal state is very likely to have significant real-world, not to mention subjective consequences, and that this would be an example of unconscious magic. Since most people do not think that every conjunction of consciousness and intent is magical, then from this point of view, the majority of their magical acts will be unconscious ones, meaning that they are not recognized to be causally affecting as they are. Those who can identify their mind states and emotions as they arise will have taken a crucial step toward making their magic conscious and thus hopefully more skillful. I would very much like to be able to say that unconscious magical acts are likely less powerful or effective than conscious magical acts, but I unfortunately do not believe this to be true, and I view unconscious magic as one of the primary problems facing the world today. In other words, the failure of most of us to consider every intention a magical act with implications beyond what we can imagine is possible, and thus the failure to have a potent impetus to apply a carefully chosen moral and philosophical code to every waking and dreaming intention results in an inconceivable amount of collateral unconscious magic, much of which ranges from being immoral, unkind, unsustainable, and unskillful to being extremely destructive, toxic, and ruinous. I would encourage you to apply at least a basic universal non-harming ethic to your every thought, word, and deed, and you will help to reduce this ongoing catastrophe. Remember the first training in all things? I wish you the best of luck balancing this high standard with the realities of being a hominid. My point here is not to cause practitioners to become filled with guilt and neuroticism about every unskillful thought that they have, as that would likely proliferate the sorts of mental qualities that I'm trying to reduce. So the trick is to find a skillful, kind, and reasonable way to treat your heart and mind and the various forces and feelings that roll through them. These definitions of magic and the ultimate and relative points of view help define various axes of perceptual and paradigmatic development. The degree to which practitioners perceive and appreciate ordinary and extraordinary magical aspects of reality. Okay, these are definitions. So A, the degree to which practitioners perceive and appreciate ordinary and extraordinary magical aspects of reality. And B, the degree to which they perceive and appreciate the ultimate aspects of reality, which include such fundamentals as 1, complete interdependence, 2, perfect lawful causality and causal efficacy, 3, total agencylessness, which yet avoids unskillful, nihilistic, or responsibility absolving distortions of that perspective. 4, lack of a fixed or unchanging center point. And 5, lack of an independent, autonomous, separate perceiving subject outside of the causal matrix. 6, a comprehension that transient manifestation is equivalent to awareness, both ontologically and geospatially. 6, atemporality. 7, atemporality. 8, boundarylessness. In general, the more the ultimate aspects of reality are directly and perceptually experienced and appreciated, the more obvious it is that things are interconnected and interdependent to a degree that makes magic much more workable and provides a deeper appreciation of the vast complexities of causality. To the degree that the relative perspective is valid, where our experience field overlaps with someone else's experience field, there is an interplay of forces shaping that conjunction, specifically the consciousness and intent of each of those perceiving that conjunction. In this case, the difference between belief, intent, and force is an arbitrary one. The corollary of this is that the less obvious the conjunction of experience fields, the less obvious the interplay. This has important implications for those who practice magic, as becomes clear when we examine the next few points. Different effects may occur if the interplay or the overlap is more or less overt, particularly if the beings involved subscribe to different paradigms of what is possible. That is, if some of the beings involved think that some effects are impossible, and other beings involved think that those same effects are possible, there is potential for very deep conflict, as well as for experiencing those same effects totally differently, as our presumed knowledge of the world affects how we think we perceive the world, and even how we perceive it at some basic level. Our expectations, beliefs, previous experiences, and the paradigms that guide us condition, color, and filter what we experience. They have a direct effect on our field of experience and life. Most people don't have a well-developed understanding of the vast and complex terrain of the magical world. These factors create a type of causality that can have extraordinarily powerful magical force, something I will label the field of disbelief. While not nearly as static or simple as this name would imply, the general nature of its effects can be commented upon in rough terms. The field of disbelief is actually a field of beliefs generated by all involved agents about how things are. That 13 is sometimes considered an unlucky number, while rabbit's feet are sometimes considered lucky, though not for the rabbit, illustrates the point about various beliefs and how they may influence people's perceptions of their world and how they literally construct the world, such as the designations of hotel floors, house numbers, and the like. That 13 is avoided and omitted so often is revealing of how potent and causally efficacious various beliefs are in the world today. The fields of disbelief and belief may vary radically among people. For example, one person may consider a rabbit's foot to be very powerful, whereas another may have occasional premonitory dreams, but think that a rabbit's foot taken as lucky is pure superstition. One person may think that traveling out of body is not that unusual, but that telekinesis is completely impossible. Some people believe in angels, devils, spirits, fairies, pixies, trolls, and or ghosts. Some think it possible to speak with the dead, heal by the laying on of hands, read other people's thoughts, or divine the past or future. These are but a few examples of common magical beliefs in modern times. In general, the more people's fields of experience overlap, and the more obviously they overlap, the more fields of belief and disbelief you have to deal with. In these circumstances, overt magical acts that do not fit with the paradigms of these fields become more difficult. Ways to deal with this include, and this is a very long explanation here that includes a number of different elements. So I think we're going to stop right now and start up here at the top of the page tomorrow when we resume. I think this is pretty interesting stuff about magic and the powers, especially that stuff earlier on the powers. And I think he's going to get into some good territory here, especially for me, just, for my personal edification. So please join me when I return tomorrow at this spot. And thanks for tuning in today. Have a great